behalf of the Commission, please.
Thank you, Madam President. Honourable members, respect for human dignity and fundamental rights, including equality, are founding values of the Union. Hate speech inciting the violence and hatred on the grounds of race, colour, religion or ethnic origin is illegal in the EU, also when it happens online. Hate waves starting online lead to polarisation and radicalisation, and many turn into violent attacks. We have seen that the new technologies are abused to foster anti-democratic views. Young people are particularly targeted and exposed. We must help young people become more resilient to extreme views. For them and for our democracies as youngsters are the citizens of tomorrow. The EU horizontal framework to create a safer online space is the Digital Services Act, DSA. Under the DSA, online platforms have to set up new and user-friendly mechanisms to flag illegal content, and they must better explain their content moderation decisions. They are also obliged to promptly inform law enforcement or judicial authorities of any suspicion of a criminal offence involving a threat to the life or safety of a person. The major platforms like TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, Snapchat or YouTube need to identify and assess any systemic risk their services may pose. They need to ensure that illegal content does not go viral easily and adopt their algorithms to protect minors. During the last 6 months, the Commission had opened investigations against TikTok, Meta and Instagram related to the protection of minors. The industry has committed to a voluntary code of conduct on countering illegal hate speech. Signatories must swiftly review hate speech notice within 24 hours and swiftly remove illegal content. An updated version of this code is in the process to be integrated in the Digital Services Act, thus becoming part of its risk mitigation approach. The response of hate speech needs to involve citizens at large. We made this clear in the Commission communication of December last year on combating hate. In June, the Commission organised a European Citizens Panel on tackling hatred in society and focusing on digital threats. It showed that dialogue can overcome polarisation. The Commission is committed to follow up on the citizens' recommendations. The fight against disinformation, the EU supports the European Digital Media Observatory. Independent fact-checkers, researchers and media literacy experts detect, analyse and expose potential disinformation threats. A wide network of trusted flaggers are already active in identifying illegal hate speech. They will soon benefit from the trusted flagger mechanism in the DSA. In the fight against hate and disinformation, it's also crucial to promote transparency, democratic accountability, pluralism and free and vibrant democratic debates. Last year, to support young citizens in the exercise of their electoral rights, the Commission adopted recommendations to media states. This led to the signature of joint code of conduct from European political parties ahead of the recent European Parliament elections. Your parties agreed to encourage inclusive political discourse and committed to refrain from disseminating content that incites violence or hate speech. Young people constitute a vulnerable group which can be exploited through the misuse of political advertising. With the new political advertising regulation, it will not be possible to target political ads to young people at least 1 year under the voting age. Education plays a vital role in equipping all young people with the competencies to think critically about the content and discourse they encounter online and to actively combat efforts to radicalize and divide. Democratic citizenship education should equip all citizens with specific competencies to build their resilience against disinformation. Digital literacy is a key prerequisite for informed, confident and empowered digital citizens. The Digital Education Action Plan frames the commitment to implementing high-quality and inclusive digital education. Honourable members, radicalisation is a complex process. It starts when somebody embraces an ideology or belief that accepts violence to reach a political or ideological goal. Artificial intelligence is increasingly being used for the dissemination of violent and terrorist content online that can lead to radicalisation. To counter that, the Commission has taken a number of important actions. This year we launched the EU Knowledge Hub for Prevention of Radicalisation to support Member States in preventing violent extremism at national level. Terrorists and violent extremists misuse the internet to spread their message to intimidate, radicalise, recruit and facilitate their actions. The European Union Internet Forum brings together tech companies, member states, law enforcement agencies, civil society organisations and academia. Together, they develop concrete actions to address violent extremism and terrorist content online. In 2021, we adopted a regulation allowing member states to issue removal orders of terrorist content to online service providers to be acted upon within 24 hours. So far, more than 1,100 removal orders were already issued. Looking after the well-being of younger people and children is a duty that we all have. We need to support them and give them the means they need to stand strong in the face of polarisation and not to fall prey to radicalisation. We need to understand the broader impacts of social media on their, and it is with this in mind that President von der Leyen announced and the EU-wide inquiry on this topic in her political guidelines. I am looking forward to listening to your views in this multidimensional challenge. Thank you very much.
Grazie al Commissario. Ora facoltà di intervenire.
Thank you, Commissioner. Let's now give the floor to Mrs. Pereira, please.
Muito obrigada, Sr.
Thank you very much, Madam President. Hate speech online may be online, but has real consequences. Studies show that countries such as Portugal, 1 in every 10 young people are victim of this kind of violence. This is a vicious circle which is continued. Victims become bullies, and this affects generations. Now, the attacks may be online, but the impact is felt offline. There's Nicole Fox, is a hard example, as was recently seen. However, women and men suffer from this differently. In Portugal, there's a Telegram group with 70,000 people, and they intimidate women, and there's at times family members. We should condemn this fully, whether it's just participation in this group or whether the existence of this group. We utterly reject this group. This is a disgusting and unacceptable case, and the response to this needs to be investigation and heavy sanctions, heavy penalties. However, this fight cannot become a question of digital censorship. We cannot fall in the temptation of privatizing the responsibility for public discourse online. We cannot just make online platforms responsible for this. This would be private censorship. We need higher levels of skills in the judicial authorities, and we need better cooperation with platforms. We need to speak to users as well, specifically the youngest generation, in the way they use and the risks that exists. The black hole of the digital world is growing. Respect between women and men and peaceful coexistence in society are absolutely vital. We need to make them a reality.
Ora ha facoltà di intervenire l'onorevole Aggius.
Thank you. Mr. Ajus Saliba now, please.
What is illegal offline should be illegal online too. Tech firms often use every dirty trick that they can think of to maximize their profits and keep their audience hooked through sensationalist and harmful content. Unfortunately, violent extremists are using the same tricks, and with predatory algorithms, troll farms and bots spewing misinformation and disinformation, catchy memes and short clips are finding ways to recruit, socialise and target young people that are particularly vulnerable to online propaganda, hate speech and violent content. The problem is not a new one, yet for many years we have treated the web as the digital Wild West, where everything was allowed. To change this, we must ensure that companies running social media platforms are not exploitative and do not cause harm, and that they keep their services safe and free from hate speech, misinformation and malicious algorithmic activities. To this end, we need to properly enforce the legislation already in place, demand results and impose larger sanctions on tech giants that fall short. Second, we need media and digital competences enshrined to all educational levels and for all generations. This will help young people, in particular, to develop critical thinking skills and build resilience to violent, extremist and terrorist content online. Young people need to know their rights, distinguish facts from opinions, understand how societies work and should work, the value of privacy and the protection of their personal data, and how technologies and social media can be manipulated and how to safeguard themselves against it. Last but not least, we need to address the root causes of radicalisation, since there is no single cause or pathway into radicalisation and violent extremism, and the digital technologies might be a facilitator but rarely the cause. Radicalisation doesn't happen overnight, and as a community we all have a crucial role to play in ensuring our youths remain safe. Thanks a lot.
Grazie, onorevole Buxadevi Yarba.
Thank you. Mr. Bouchardeh now, please.
Gracias.
Thank you, President. Well, never in the history of the West have people been subject to this level of censorship and intellectual torture, converting criminals into victims and victims into criminals. I mean, tweeting a message asking the nationality of the latest murderer or rapist in Barcelona is not a crime. Asking why so many women don't get medals in sporting competitions because of men pretending to be women are competing is not a crime either. All these kinds of things are absolutely not crimes. Criticizing the wide-ranging massacres of innocents in Paraguay or Paraguayan migrants is not a crime, and nor is criticising abortion. It's not a crime to say that Spain built churches, hospitals, etc. in Latin America. That's not a crime either. But it is a crime about saying things on Facebook that are not appropriate. I mean, blocking Donald Trump's account, that's a crime. Having an illegal and secret agreement to muzzle people in exchange for not getting a fine, that is a crime. Then oppressing demonstrations against insecurity and crime, that is a crime. Trying to undermine Elon Musk's social media platform, as Kamala Harris is doing, well, that is also a crime. So, young people, carry on doing what you're doing. Continue to criticise those who are responsible. Feel free to say what you want to say. Freedom of expression is the freedom to be patriotic. Thank you.
Szanowni Państwo, nie ma wątpliwości co do...
Ladies and gentlemen, it is beyond any doubt that we should take care of prevention of dangerous content, particularly for children. But in this chamber and in the Commission, this subject is used and abused to take further steps to limit freedom of speech. You limit, you introduce preventive censorship. And then there is a proposal made to withdraw encryption of messengers. The European Commission recently came with a proposal where encryption of communication would be withdrawn and there would be preventive scanning of content for citizens. That is a Chinese version of internet. I need a clear declaration that you will do away with this project to withdraw deciphering, to withdraw filtering, and have you been working on putting pressure on Mr. Musk behind closed doors? Thank you.
Madame la Présidente, Monsieur.
Madam President, Commissioner, recently neo-Nazi propaganda has become cool. So-called pop fascism is flourishing on social media, ready-made thoughts for young people. A few weeks ago, I was deeply shocked when I came across a video clip in a video game on the subject of remigration, which had been created by the youth wing of the AfD. This is a German party which has MEPs in this parliament, and that's why I called for this debate. So these images, which are created using AI, use all the tropes of Nazi propaganda. So you see white, blonde, Aryan people dancing to techno music by shoving racialized stereotypes into planes. This is intolerable. Now, of course, there are lots of racist works on the internet, but there's a difference here because this clip and this video were created by a political party, the AfD. Now, of course, you can shield yourself using our legislation. We've got the Digital Services Act making platforms responsible for their content, but as far as I'm aware, this video is still doing the rounds on X, and 1 in 5 young people don't know what the Holocaust was. So that is why we must go even further and condemn all racist content. We have to sanction the enemies of democracy who are already here with us.
Sparentak.
Ms. Sparentak.
Thank you, President. Loop een gemiddelde schoolklas in en de meeste jongens...
And well, in a normal school, all of the students know what influencers do. Everyone knows how to use the internet, all the pupils, and they have access of a woman behaving like a man, and this is all our fault. The algorithms on social media are increasingly manipulative. The better the algorithm works, the more the companies earn. And there's also antidemocratic discourse, which is using the same same focus, that have personalized algorithms which exploits their personal profile on social media. Click-based algorithms and which are linked to personal profiles should be transparent. We need to take into account those people who exploit and undermine our democracy.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bernard-san. Thank you very much indeed, President. Now, obviously, we've got all kinds of disadvantages linked to abuses of new technologies, and that is why we've got dehumanization, which allows for anonymity, and we're seeing an increase in the far right, and that has a lot to do with online manipulation and the propagation of hate speech and deep fakes, or the massive dissemination of fake news. So they are all relevant, and given the majorities in this parliament, as I say, this has a lot to do with the use of these shady resources, and you all know what I mean by that. We've got a number of platforms that allow for and enable this kind of behavior, and they exploit all kinds of business opportunities, and they don't have any social interest or responsibility, and they're really not in any kind of public interest. And there are new platforms and content moderators, and they propagate illegitimate content and just prioritize profit. They're not in the public interest. So there's no such thing as a private interest which is in the public interest. And that is why we would call on the incoming Commission to give some thought as to how they can look at this European public space and set up new platforms which would supersede the current model and instead operate in the public interest. Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Grisulis.
Hello, everyone. I'm the last political prisoner of the Soviet Union. I was fighting against communism, and I was sent to Soviet camps for this. Lithuania is independent today, and I can see that we are creating a new gender theory which is more horrible than the communist ideology. Those who are defending Christian values and speak against gender theories are being persecuted in the European Union. They are being taken to court. If you say on internet that homosexuality is a crime, you will be taken to court. I am now being prosecuted, but we should recall the words of St. Paul. We are promoting gender theories, and we are taking human rights as an excuse. We are giving up our values. We are promoting all kinds of theories. The Soviet Union came to an end, and the same end will come to the European Union if people...
Thank you. Ms. Maletti.
Thank you, Chair, dear colleagues. In my country, in Greece, recently, a group of underage girls met up online in order to beat up another one of their schoolmates, also a girl. The video went viral. The girl ended in hospital, and then their friends asked for revenge through hate speech by publicizing the data of the perpetrators. In Belgium, a young man committed suicide because he had been hounded concerning issues of stopping climate change. It is obvious that these new technologies are a new way of radicalizing people and turning them towards criminal actions. We have a good base with the DSA, but we need to criminalize hate speech. There should be no anonymity. It should be lifted when this is necessary. We need to do something about AI and control the access of children to internet, and it should be completely forbidden below a certain age. My country has already transposed the DSA, but the Commission should see to it that this is done in all of the member states. New technologies have brought a lot of positive issues, but they can also promote hate, fear, violence, and we need to change that.
Ms. Rep.
Neue Technologien bieten große.
New technologies provide massive new opportunities. They can open us up to a world of networking and knowledge, but there is another side to the coin. The power of digital platforms is far too great, and I'm concerned that we have to rely on the moral views of the few billionaires who control these platforms. We can't be reliant on Mark Zuckerberg, Elon Musk, or even Vladimir Putin. The effects of these platforms on our democracies are difficult to calculate. I mean, Brexit was an example of the kinds of things that can happen if algorithms decide the content you see. I mean, and the result is hatred and mistrust vis-à-vis our democratic institutions. Members of the European Parliament from the AfD push for that kind of thing and cause it when they put videos that are anti-migrant, etc., on TikTok. They spread hate. And particularly affected are young people. They often don't have the awareness to distinguish between real and information and fake information. The effects of this are massive on young people. It endangers their trust in society, democracy, and their future. We're seeing that in elections in Germany, for example, in the eastern federal states, in Thuringia, 35% of young people voted for the AfD. So we need to ensure that platforms have more responsibility. They need to do something about the anti-democratic content that they have. It needs to be identified and taken down rapidly. Civil society organisations who fight this kind of radicalisation need to receive more support, and together we need to do more against hate speech and fake news. The internet should remain a space for everyone to be more interconnected rather than something that undermines our democracies. Thank you.
Mr. Legeri.
Merci, Madame la Présidente.
Thank you, Madam President. Dear colleagues, the aim of the Commission can be attractive. Who doesn't want to fight online hate speech and youth radicalisation? But we need to be careful here. Who is going to decide about what is good or bad? Do we really want to give this power to Brussels? Let's remember Commissioner Breton when he tried to ban the Trump-Musk debate on European social media. Where is the freedom of expression? Last week in the Libe committee, some people tried to deny the link between anti-Semitism and Israeli hate. That's utterly unacceptable. Do we want wokist lobbies having oversight of this hate? No, that's discourse. No, that's not what we want. We do not want to give the EU power here. We need to protect our freedom of thought and expression. Democracy cannot be built on silence. Thank you very much.
Balczek.
Thank you, Mr. Balczek.
Colleagues, it goes without saying that we must combat radicalisation on the internet. Yet I would say that we must condemn any form of discrimination and radicalisation. Yes, racism and xenophobia are unacceptable, but it is with the same fervour that we must condemn the radical action of green activists that put public policy and security at risk, pouring paint on works of art, blocking roads and airports,
cannot be acceptable forms of protest, yet they're far too often normalized. On the other hand, colleagues, technology in itself cannot be declared the sole root cause of radicalization of young people. Over the past decades, public debate has taken a sharp turn to the left. That means that political views that were acceptable years ago, such as a stance against same-sex marriage or illegal migration, are now declared radical. If that is what you mean with anti-democratic discourse, then I must congratulate you. George Orwell would be proud of your news.
Mr. Petra.
Colleagues, here we're discussing new technologies and social networks, and we say that they are a part of the lives of young people, but for many of them, social networks are not just part of their life, they are their entire life, and that's a problem, because this is not only a waste of time. This is a very easy way to become a victim of hate speech or anti-democracy. Now, let's think, how many of us, if they were able to go back to their youth, would spend their time in social networks? I believe that the solution to the problem we're discussing now lies in education. Education which should prepare young people for the current reality. We should explain a simple truth to them. There is no successful person in the modern world who spends his entire time in social...
Thank you very much. Ms. Gesa.
Vielen Dank, Frau Präsidentin.
Thank you very much, Madam President, Commissioner, colleagues. Nazi propaganda, right-wing extremism and hatred, misogynistic hatred, all of this can be found on TikTok. But, you know, what kind of young people actively go looking for that kind of content? I mean, virtually no one. TikTok makes sure that they nevertheless encounter that kind of content. They push these videos onto their timelines, and then it might be curiosity or just a mistake that they see the content and then possibly comment on it, and they will continue then to be pushed the same content and soon disappear down a rabbit hole. And they spend hour upon hour on TikTok, day in, day out. And so you can just see how it then comes about that so many are right-wing inclined and completely remote from reality because, as I say, it's right-wing, anti-Semitic or misogynistic. It doesn't have to do much with high-tech, but rather with a business model. But we can deliberately tackle this. We can tackle the right-wing algorithms and alter them in such a way so that users can select content for themselves and they are not forced to accept something, because it has to do with self-worth, democracy, as well as the security of citizens in Europe, which we are duty-bound to protect. Thank you very much. There's a blue card for you, Ms. Gesa, from Member Tinkin. Can you accept it? Yes.
Kiitoksia, arvoisa puheenjohtaja.
Thank you, Madam President.
Just a minute for translation. Yes, do you have there?
Is it English?
The time is running on the screen. Can I get 30 seconds?
No, it's okay.
Kiitoksia, puheenjohtaja.
Thank you, Madam President. I agree with the speaker that Nazi propaganda is something we have to intervene with. It is wrong, and you were concerned how it will increase anti-Semitism. I'm just wondering, because you leave out the biggest reason for anti-Semitism today in TikTok and in other channels, the videos where they are shouting from the river to the sea. So Hamas sympathies is to do with that. So why did you leave that out of your comment?
You might have noticed from my speech, I am German, and I know that the biggest source of anti-Semitism does not come from Palestine, but from Europe. I have studied my history. As far as current anti-Semitism is concerned, I don't care what the source is. I don't care if it's far right, or whether it is Muslim. It's not important. The important thing is that we combat it and that we do protect Jews. And this is what we need to do in the internet. And that means going against terrorist or clearly illegal content. But as far as legal content is concerned, and a lot of content is legal, having opinions about the way Israel is defending itself, that is legal if it's not anti-Semitic. And this is where we need to change the algorithms to make sure that people access content they actually want to see and not the content that TikTok, that the platform wants them to see, pushing them into a rabbit hole, because this is what drives radicalization.
Grazie, onorevole.
Thank you very much. Mr. David.
Dámy a pánové.
Ladies and gentlemen, since the time where in the democratic world all the media are now owned by oligarchs and billionaires, the world is governed now by social media. Until the end of last century, all the bad people could not really defend themselves against defamation and hate speech. I know that this restriction of the monopoly on public speech is very controversial, but I want to remind you of Article 17 of the Charter of Fundamental Rights, which says everybody can defend his or her opinions and accept and spread ideas and information without regard to borders. Censorship is unacceptable. I don't think we can ban hate which is caused by crimes.
Thank you, Mr. Mazurek.
Pán komisár, aj Mao Tse-tung a súdruh Stalin by boli hrdí na to, čo...
Mao Tse-tung and Stalin, I think, would be proud of what's been said here. We're basically looking at ending up under a totalitarian state under your leadership. I mean, the extremists are the people here who are forcing us to live under the Green Deal. They're destroying our well-being. I mean, young people can't even afford to buy a house nowadays. Extremists are those nutters who chain themselves to roads so that cars can't get past. I mean, they're the extremists. It's not patriots. It's not people who love their countries. It's not those people who want to protect their children. It's not the people who want to protect their families from danger. They're not extremists. We want a free Europe, and we have to stop people like you in the European Commission doing what they do. We need to be sensible here. If being sensible is radicalisation for you, well, that's a problem for you.
Mr. Mazurek, you can't insult the Commission in this chamber. Let me just remind you of that. You have to use appropriate and respectful language towards the institutions represented by colleagues here in the chamber. I therefore urge you to use appropriate and respectful language in this chamber. Thank you very much. Mr. Ta.
Köszönöm a szót. Kedves...
Madam President, dear colleagues, dear young people up there, many of you up in the gallery, and I'm delighted that you are here with us. We all agree that digital technologies offer new opportunities. At the same time, however, we are aware that these platforms are often used as a means for radicalisation, all kinds of unscientific nonsense and fake news. Online platforms bear a huge responsibility in all of this, and it is their job to filter and to moderate content, and also remember that children too are accessing their content. So we need to increase education, trying to promote conscious use of new technologies rather than excluding them from schools. And so we need to look at further development of the code of conduct for the major internet platforms, because we're seeing too much anti-democratic propaganda as well as political manipulation of young people. And we as MEPs have a huge responsibility in all of this in terms of what we say and how we say it. Thank you, Mr. Assis.
Thank you, Madam President. Commissioner, tolerance, if we have no limits to tolerance, then tolerance disappears. If we extend our tolerance to the intolerant, then, and if we're not prepared to defend our society, then intolerance will be killed, and so will intolerance. And this is one of the best philosophers of the 20th century, Karl Popper, and this comes from his work, The Open Society and Its Enemies. And that's what we're talking about here. There's right-wing totalitarianism, left-wing totalitarianism, and but we need to defend liberal democracy, and we need to be aware of one thing. The only limit that can be set out is a limit of those who are intolerant and those who undermine the basic foundation of a civic democratic society. And this is something that's being seen extensively online these days. It affects many different parts of society, specifically young people. The response to this needs to be twin. Firstly, better cooperation with online platforms in the name of defence of freedom. It's in defence of freedom, not in for the atrophy of freedom. And secondly, there needs to be critical thinking, autonomous thinking, free and aware thinking for every young person in Europe. That's the path that we need to follow.
Ceccardi. Thank you very much. Ms. Ceccardi.
Grazie. L'Unione Europea.
Thank you. Well, the European Union is turning the fight against hate speech online into a Trojan horse. I mean, it's true new technologies can be used to spread hatred, threats, etc. I mean, I receive threats every day from Islamic fundamentalists or various keyboard warriors. But we shouldn't be suffocating dissent here. We shouldn't be silencing people who express uncomfortable ideas. I mean, the Commission tried to silence a debate between Elon Musk, and they've also tried to silence Donald Trump. I mean, democracy is based on freedom of thought. We need debate. If we do away with the freedom of thought, we basically do away with the West, with what we are. We basically suffocate Europe. So Europe is betraying itself here. It's betraying all the fundamental philosophies of Western thought. We're gagging people, particularly gagging those ideas that the woke left doesn't like, that those left-wing elected representatives that go on and on about their theories. They like pointing the finger at people, but they really don't know about the fundamental pillars of Europe. Thank you.
Mr. Inselvini.
È vero, Presidente.
Madam President, it is quite true that new technologies and social media have a huge influence on the minds of young people. However, the kind of radicalisation that they are subjected to also comes from the left. Now, the left go on about freedom, but they rarely practice it. Now, young people are subject to bombardment all about LGBT propaganda and all kinds of entities which promote individualization and discriminate against those who uphold the principles of our civilization. We've got Van Zanen, for example, who is accused of incitement to hatred because he protested against Libya. And then we have got a kind of controlled economy, and anybody who defends family, who criticizes unified thinking, that is the real anti-democracy movement here. Anybody who stands out and defends their own ideas, refuses to conform, is gagged. So you're quite right. We do need to protect young people from this false and artificial world that somebody has built all around them in order to better control them. And it's important that we free ourselves and remind people of the beauty of life. Thank you very much. Ms. Joveva.
Hvala.
Thank you very much. History seems to be repeating. That is always my first thought as I see the development of this destructive propaganda rhetoric which is being used by extremists more and more. The purpose is clear. Division, destabilization of democratic societies. This same ideology of hate with the same ideas, with the same form of communication is something that we once managed to push to the side after painful lessons. But now this has successfully made it back to the mainstream, where along with the use of AI for disseminating their ideologies, together with misinformation, discreditation is the main tool that is being used. This is a coordinated, well-financed, supranational propaganda campaign aimed at supporting authoritarianism, if not something worse, in Europe. During the rise of Nazism, this was done through radio. Today, this is being done using social media. And they're right. The choice is ours. So do you really want this to become the mainstream rhetoric and the new normal once again? I do not.
Schilling.
Ms. Schilling.
Liebe Kolleginnen und Kollegen, eigentlich...
Colleagues, I wanted to start differently, but we've just seen a prime example from our colleague Matsurek, who showed us how you're meant to hold a speech, and yet manipulated and showed us how we can manipulate people, radicalise people, using social media to achieve this, to influence elections, to influence the way societies are being split and fragmented and spread fake news. He's not the only one, but thank you for that textbook example. Donald Trump talking about people eating pets. We're hearing millions of lies repeated, 3.3 million comments, 39,000 checks, memes, graphics within the last 4 months. This is part and parcel of political practice in the meantime. And I can tell you that we young people who use social media, who grew up with social media, we're not going to sit and take this, that our platforms are being used as political footballs in geopolitics. They should serve us to allow us to express ourselves, to communicate with one another, and not to be instrumentalized by various political powers. We're going to work on this to make sure there are proper rules, good rules, and we can inform people about what sort of nonsense they're being spoon-fed by others. Ms. Anderson.
Thank you. Heute beklagen Sie nun also
Today, you're complaining about the so-called abuse of new technologies. Apparently, our young people are being radicalised. But it's your radical policies that divide people and stir them up. During Corona, you made people a public enemy and made people a scapegoat because of mRNA and just because people spoke out against your vaccine propaganda. Anyone who's critical, well, anyone who's critical, you demonize them, but there are misogynistic, there is Islamic ideology on TikTok and on other platforms that you ignore. You say you want to deal with radicalism, but we need a response to the radicality of your policy, which allows a large-scale illegal invasion of our shores. So instead of censoring, take the criticisms levelled at you sensibly and make policies in favour of the people. Then there won't be any radicalisation of the people, will there? Thank you.
Ms. Dostal.
Vážení, děkuji za otevření tohoto tématu.
Thank you for raising this. We live in a country where pro-government activists wished death or concentration camp to everyone who refused to wear masks. in a country where old people who vote for conservative lefts have to die out so that progressive forces win. The old people are not educated. They should be supervised when they vote. The government has recruited an army colonel for strategic communication who calls his opponents swine. And opposition members are called as are referred to as dirt, like, for example, Mrs. Gregorova. We live in a country when the American embassies and National Endowment for Democracy finance NGOs that bad-mouth opponents of the pro-government narrative. All this on platforms where democratic debate is impossible. Young people, unfortunately, do radicalize. I call upon the Czech government, embassies and colleagues to stop spreading hate speech. Thank you.
Ms. Reaper.
Wir sprechen über eine neue...
We're talking about a new issue, algorithms, where if you look at a video, then you will be directed to even more extreme content. And for young people, there's often no choice. It's not that they are necessarily addicted, but they're exposed to messages that radicalize them. And this could endanger democracy. It's good that the Commission is doing something to these addictive algorithms under the DSA, but it's not enough. The platforms need to step up their game in qualitative terms. They need to get external auditors who check messages. And if you forward a message, you should only be forwarded to that if you expressly click on it. And young people need to think critically about sources and what they're reading. They need to have a kind of AI driving license. There are other solutions which are not real solutions. We need to focus on our young people and our children because they are the future.
Mr. Annemans.
Collega's, kijk eens aan zich.
Ladies and gentlemen, look at this. The Liberal group think that progression and headway of new technologies constitute a danger because they can be used by young people, and I quote, to manipulate and radicalise young people through hate speech and antidemocratic discourse. That's unquote. With this sort of Mickey Mouse speech of political correctness, the tone has already been set and you can't have a serious debate. The regime that at the moment holds power in the European Union is wanting to use newspeak, using vague, woolly terms and trying to bring in measures to limit and restrict the free movement of information on the media. Commissioner Breton, who failed to exert pressure on Elon Musk, in the meantime is now cozying up to Donald Trump. And we heard Ms. Jourova telling us a telltale about the evil wolf that sounded like something from Harry Potter, and quasi-religious forms of fanaticism that Elon Musk was talking about. He's been referred to as a promoter of evil with monstrous power in his hands, that she's really scared by digital platforms in bad hands. With this sort of European Commission, of course, we don't need communism anymore. There's no point, really, commemorating the brave work of the Hungarian people standing against Russian tanks in 1956, if, in the meantime, you're happy to give up your freedom to a European Union who is in no way better than the Soviet Union. Thank you, Ms. Čifranova, Oščanová.
Dobrý deň a začnem osobným presvedčením. Mladí ľudia nie sú ani horší, ani lepší, ani radikálnejší.
Thank you very much. We see that young people are no more radical than anyone else. But what we see today is a new power that's been unleashed, the online world. If you think that things only happen there, though, you're wrong. The internet is full. The internet is not a free space. It is a place of radicalism where rights are violated and where there is violence. So we must do everything in our power to deal with these issues, these cases. The younger generation cannot be pumped full of toxic content. We need instruments which will allow the internet to be safe. They do actually exist, and we actually have to use them. We have an opportunity because we can give young people more than they're currently receiving from us.
Prego.
Thank you, Mr. Asensio-Odra.
Gracias, Presidente.
Thank you, President. Mr. Bouchardet spoke about the freedom of the patriots and the legitimate protests in the UK against migration. And I'm sure that you remember that these were not peaceful protests. They were racist riots in which people were beaten up, vulnerable people, and houses were burned. Why? Because fake news was spread with the help of Elon Musk, falsely attributing some murders to a migrant person, whereas the actual perpetrator was English. In Spain, they're trying to do the same thing. Mr. Bouchardet, you are at war with the truth. And the problem is that many people, mostly young people, live in a parallel universe where fear, hatred and aggression grow. Because you're talking about people coming here in boats. They're not looking at the people at the top, the elites, the people who exploit them, those who are responsible for the crises we're experiencing. So we need a European Union that protects us from the fake news of the far right. Could I please speak? It's my turn. I'm coming to an end. Lies destroy democracy, and the right to true information allows us to develop an opinion and express it. This is not what the far right wants. If there's no truth, there's no freedom. There's only oppression.
Mr. Young.
Vielen Dank.
Thank you very much. Censorship is back in Germany, indeed thanks to the Digital Services Act that's been produced by the Commission and blessed by this Parliament. Allegedly, the society needs to be protected from hate speech, but actually it's an unconstitutional oppression of opinions that the red-green state ideology can't cope with. We can see that the Federal Network Agency is meant to look for socially dangerous content that's meant to be taken down or even reported. In dark times of our history, we had people damaging the society, and we're seeing this now. But you don't have a problem with the totalitarian approach. Nazis are always the others. The German Federal Agency for the Network is run by a Green who was trained in Cairo. We are taking the poacher to actually be the gamekeeper now. It's ridiculous. Mr. Kohut.
Okay, prego. Yes.
Grazie, prezydenta. Media społecznościowe bardzo szybko stały się.
Social media very fast became the fifth power, and as every power, also this one can become a weapon in wrong hands. The internet and social media were supposed to connect people and give access to knowledge. They were supposed to. However, already today we have to face the consequences of using the internet in the wrong way. The technologies which were supposed to connect us create divisions through manipulation, fake news and hate speech. And the difference between a medicine and a poison lies often in a quantity. And also here, everything depends in whose hands the technologies are. The Brexit was caused by disinformation. Russia is fighting the whole world through misinformation. The first Trump's campaign with Cambridge Analytica showed how powerful these technologies are. Now the owner of the X platform is supporting Trump. We cannot just be passive and look at huge technology giants to rule the world. The internet is a threat in their hands, just like atomic bomb of Oppenheimer, which was supposed to bring peace. So right now we either have to rule the network, the internet, or it will rule us. So we have to have better law, IP control, and consequences. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Vagel.
La haine en ligne.
Hatred online that we must fight is harassment, insults, the spread of content which can lead to young people becoming depressed or even committing suicide. We have to try to avoid criminalising opinions, and some in the European Union are tempted to do so. Hatred is a feeling. It's very hard to legislate on feelings. We can only legislate on specific actions which cause specific harm to specific victims. We don't have the right to persecute opinions and to spread woke opinions which don't really exist, such as the collective imagination, human conscience, or universal values. The risk is that we could have arbitrary ideology that could be used against any of us, any of you, even though at the moment it's the patriots who are being targeted by the thought police.
Thank you, President. Colleagues, freedom of speech is one of the main achievements of civilization and modern civil society. The achievements of the digital age in which we live offers limitless opportunities to exchange of information, but also many challenges. The social networks are becoming an arena for spreading hatred, particularly in its most dangerous forms, religious and ethnic. There is a rise in abuse of chatbots. They manipulate public opinion, and this is particularly used during elections. Young people with their open antennas for knowledge are very sensitive and very susceptible to manipulation from the social media. This is a serious threat for democracy. We denounce all forms of disinformation. We need to be sensitive as a civil society. We need to find the right balance between freedom of speech and abuse of free speech. Thank you.
Mr. Kraus.
Thank you very much, President. Freedom of expression is under fire. The AI Act, the Digital Services Act, and now an EU proposal to criminalise hate speech. The left wing has unveiled a whole new arsenal to shoot down ideas and to put across their opinion as the only sole truth to everybody out there. But they can't manage with reason alone. A lot of people are running away from left-wing parties for good reason. The next step is to disqualify other opinions and classify them as disinformation, hate speech, or anti-democratic. But it's the very impact of the freedom of opinion trying to restrict that is what is anti-democratic, because that should be the basis of our democracy. Restricting the freedom of expression is the most undemocratic attack you can carry out. So turning to the left, stop trying to bind us and restrict us in our freedom of expression, because otherwise it will be your end, I believe. We shouldn't allow this to go ahead.
Mr.
Moreira de Sá.
Thank you, President. We're living in times when hate speech and anti-democratic rhetoric have become perfect excuses to justify a new despotism, censorship disguised as virtue. Whenever power feels threatened, freedom is targeted, And the case of Musk in the Sakharov Prize is an example of this. He was excluded in an opaque process, a voice silenced under the pretext of freedom of expression. The Commission has clashed openly with Musk, accusing him of failing to monitor hate speech on X. The controversy has already led to the fall of Thierry Breton. But the legal proceedings that the Commission is taking against Musk, including the application of fines, is still very alive. Even this weekend, Der Spiegel called Elon Musk public enemy number 2, behind Donald Trump. Just imagine. The European Union and the Spiegel are doing the same to Musk as Lula's Brazil and Maduro's Venezuela are doing. Just think of Umberto Eco's book, The Name of the Rose. In that novel, books are poisoned to protect monks from doubt and laughter. Today, public debate is poisoned to protect society from freedom. And as we know, poison can only result in one thing, death.
We have a catch the eye. No, sorry, not catch the eye. What's a blue card from Mr. Goncalves?
Thank you. I can't believe you're talking about freedom. You have a problem with truth. In this debate on hate speech and the proliferation of hate speech, well, we know what's happening in Portugal. We know what you and your party and your representatives are doing. Your parliamentary leader in Portugal said it would be better if the police killed more than just shooting. Another party representative says, if another criminal dies, then there'll be one fewer person voting for the left bloc. How can you do this? No empathy. How can we actually really deal with hate speech? MEP, you're talking about what's happening in Portugal, but I didn't want to talk about what's happening in Portugal in this chamber. But what is contributing to hate speech is when we mix up police and criminals, when we protect criminals instead of citizens and instead of the law enforcement authorities. I think that we should think long and hard about other things. You know, you have put forward this question, but it's just a question that will polarize, that will further create division. And I would like to have a further debate with you, but I won't be doing it here in this forum.
Thank you, Mr. Tatch.
Thank you very much. Yesterday, I was at a dinner for the Association of MEPs from those who govern in the Commission, the EPP and the Socialists, those losers who are hanging on to the coattails of the EPP to keep in power. And we were talking about the American elections. We talked about Trump, and it seemed that Trump was Hitler. These were supposed to be serious MEPs. They were talking about Trump like that. They were using lies and speculation about his future. Ms. Applebaum, who is supposedly a great intellectual, was talking about Trump as like Hitler. We saw Ms. Harris talking about Trump as being like Hitler. This is an insult to the intelligence of the people by the left. Calling Hitler or Nazis or fascists anybody who they don't like is true censorship and an attack on European thinking. Do you want a Ministry for Truth to impose a lie? We're not going to allow it.
Thank you very much, Ms. Androuet.
Please.
A young person between 15 and 30 spends at least 5 hours on the screen a day. For some people, it's the only way to have social contact because of the threats of violence against them or others. But rather than looking at this as an issue, our Commission wants to attack social media like X as being culpable. Yes, young people use social media. Yes, people use approaches to adopt this new family. But rather than finding solutions to the issues, they're coming in heavy-handed. And I think that this is something that we're seeing the Commission doing. Those who are trying to fight against wokeism or Islamism, they are attacked as Antifa, and others then have the upper hand in the debate. We have to offer a different future for our young people. The problem is not the internet. It's a Western society that refuses to accept reality and pushes people towards a sect and spoon feeds them what their truth is. We'll move on to the Catch the Eye. There are various colleagues who've asked for the floor. Let's start with Ms. Tonin.
Prego. Drage kolegice in kolegi, pred 15 leti se je zdelo, da so socialno.
Thank you very much. There's the approach being given that the social networks are the future. They're going to be the key tool for promoting democracy. 15 years down the road, we get the impression that these social networks are now a network for spreading hate and intolerance. In the past 15 years, what has changed so dramatically that the social media have gone from being something that's positive to something negative? Well, algorithms. Algorithms are the ones that promote hate, because in today's world, a positive piece of news is no longer news, and hence the algorithms are promoting negative news and intolerance. And I'm convinced that a ban is not the solution. For the future, we need to make sure young people learn and are educated. They have to learn and not be uncritical in their dealings with the social media.
C'è l'onorevole Sosa Silva.
Mr. Silva? No? Okay. Mr. Lopez Aguilar.
Formas.
Micro, yeah. Yes.
Comisión.
The business model of platforms, which are usually owned by far-right magnates, is not just to exploit the vulnerabilities of the users, it's especially generating addictive algorithms that particularly attract young people who are their main users. They spend half their lives in front of these screens. They consume hate speech that radicalise them, as well as violent content. The problem is not just the content, it's also the way in which the young people's vulnerabilities are being exploited. This is a huge challenge for the next Commission. We had the DSA. We set up a strategy against hate speech that also includes a code of conduct for platforms that barely binds them to anything, but also the demand that the Commission comes forward with a legislative proposal to make sure that incitation of hatred is a European crime. But it's not enough. We need literacy training for digital services. We need to help these young people. They're the future of Europe. Thank you.
Mr. Timikinen.
Prego.
Go ahead.
Arvoisa puhemies, vihapuhe, radikalisoituminen ja demokratiavastaisuus.
President, radicalisation and anti-democratic statements. One has to ask where this all leads. This is a very topical issue, and what has become clear to me is that a lot has been happening in recent times. It's clear that when I look at it, there is hate speech, there is radicalisation, and there are anti-democratic movements, and that is Palestinian propaganda in high schools. This is an attack on Israel. They are promoting the destruction of Israel, and Hamas, a terrorist organization, continues to get a lot of support. Of course, the left repeats this too, and that is hate speech. That is radicalisation, and it's all banned except at left-wing Palestinian events. Thank you very much.
President, it's too loud. Before I start, it's too loud. I cannot even hear you. So.
Di fare silenzio.
Please, could you keep the noise down and respect the speakers who are taking the floor? Go ahead, Mr. Zieper.
Dear colleagues, honourable House, as we talk of young people here, with my, in other cases, little life experience of 27 years, I am happy to take the floor today. I may present you with 3 truths. Number 1. TikTok is owned and controlled by the Chinese Communist Party, responsible for atrocities like putting Uyghurs in concentration camps. Number 2, because of that, the algorithm is of course also controlled and manipulated by the Chinese Communist Party. Number 3, if you, my dear colleagues, do not join TikTok, and if you do not are active there, you will leave this platform and the young people on this platform to the enemies of democracy inside this house and outside this house. So please be active there no matter what. I am not much, but I am young, so I hope you trust me on that. Thank you.
Ora passiamo la parola.
Okay, now for the Commission to respond, Commissioner Wojciechowski. Go ahead, sir.
Thank you very much, Madam President, honourable members. Thank you for your contributions. It's clear that new technologies have transformed our economies, our societies, our lives. They have multiplied benefits, but we cannot ignore their risks. Hate speech, often fueled by disinformation, is one of them. We need to keep our values of equality, tolerance, non-discrimination. We also need to keep our focus on delivering policies which improve citizens' lives. We want to support active citizenship and social inclusion with the aim of fostering more equitable and tolerant societies. And there is a pivotal role here as it concerns the smart and safe use of digital technologies. The scope of prevention activities is broad, and we can extend the education, employment, justice, social inclusion or sports. Within the framework of the Digital Services Act, the industry true commitment is necessary to succeed. We have good basis, but we need to intensify our efforts and adopt the fast development of new technologies. Thank you very much.
Grazie. La discussione.
Thank you very much. The debate is now closed, and the sitting is now suspended for a few minutes. As you know, we'll restart with the votes.
Okay, dear colleagues, can I ask you to take your seats?